Kwesi Mensah was 32, living in Accra, Ghana, and he truly believed his marriage was fine. Not perfect but stable. They had a home, a growing business, and a life that looked solid from the outside. So when a man walked into his office one afternoon and handed him a set of legal papers, Kwesi thought it was just routine business. It wasn't. The moment he saw the word divorce, his chest tightened. But what shocked him even more was what came next. This wasn't just a divorce filing. His wife, Ajoa Mensah, was suing him for everything. His house, his business, even his personal savings. Kwesi sat frozen in his chair, reading the same lines again and again, hoping he misunderstood. But the words didn't change. According to Ajoa, he had been financially abusive. She claimed he controlled all the money and left her with nothing. And because of that, she wanted full ownership of everything they had built together. It didn't make sense. Kwesi had always supported her, trusted her, given her access to everything. How could she turn around and say this? His hands felt cold as he dropped the papers on his desk. This wasn't just a breakup anymore. This felt like a plan, like she was trying to erase him completely. And deep down something didn't sit right, because the woman making these serious accusations was not telling the whole truth. From the outside, Kwesi and Ajoa looked like the perfect couple in Accra. People admired them. They had a nice house, a business that was growing fast, and a lifestyle many people wished for. At events, they smiled, laughed, and supported each other. Friends would often say, "You two are goals." Kwesi believed it too. He thought he had built a strong, happy life with his wife. But behind closed doors, things were slowly changing. At first it was small things. Ajoa started becoming distant. She would spend more time on her phone, stepping out to take calls and lowering her voice when she spoke. When Kwesi asked simple questions, she would brush him off or say he was overthinking. He didn't want to argue, so he let it go. Then came the money issues. Ajoa became very particular about finances. She started questioning every decision, asking for details she never cared about before. At the same time, she became more secretive about her own spending. Sometimes large amounts would move, and when Kwesi asked, she had quick, unclear answers. So he trusted her. He told himself it was just stress from work or pressure from their growing business. He ignored the feeling in his gut. Now, sitting alone with those lawsuit papers in his hands, everything felt different. Every small moment he once ignored started replaying in his mind. The late-night calls. The sudden attitude changes. The tension around money. It was like looking at the same story, but seeing the truth for the first time. And Kwesi couldn't stop thinking, had this been planned all along? When Kwesi finally read the full court documents, his heart dropped. The accusations were worse than he expected. Ajoa didn't just want a divorce. She had painted him as a controlling and manipulative husband. According to her, he controlled all the money, limited her freedom, and made her feel powerless in their own home. Kwesi couldn't believe what he was reading. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was a completely different story. A story where he was the villain. And the worst part? People started believing it. Friends who once laughed with him now kept their distance. Some stopped answering his calls. Even a few relatives began acting cold, giving him looks that felt like silent judgment. Word was spreading fast, and in their social circle, stories like this didn't stay private for long. Kwesi could feel his reputation slipping away day by day. He started questioning everything. Should he defend himself? Should he speak up? But every time he thought about it, he realized something. Ajoa sounded convincing. Her story was emotional, detailed, and carefully told. If he reacted too quickly, it might make him look guilty. Still, deep down, Kwesi knew the truth. He had never controlled her. He had trusted her with money, given her access, supported her ideas, and stood by her through everything. They built their life together step by step. Nothing about what she said felt real to him. So why was she doing this? Why was the woman he loved trying so hard to destroy him? Kwesi sat in silence, staring at the papers again, feeling a mix of anger, confusion, and disbelief. Because this wasn't just about divorce anymore. This felt like a calculated attack. One evening, Kwesi was sitting alone at home, his mind still heavy from everything that had happened. He couldn't sleep, couldn't focus, so he picked up his phone and started going through old files. Photos, messages, anything that could distract him. That's when he opened his cloud backups. As he scrolled, something unusual caught his eye. Old voicemail recordings saved automatically months ago. He didn't even remember saving them. At first he almost skipped past them. They looked unimportant, just random files. But for some reason he clicked one. It was Ajoa's voice. Kwesi paused. At first he thought it might be a normal message, maybe something from the past he forgot. But within seconds he realized something was off. Her tone, it didn't sound like the Ajoa he knew. It wasn't warm or emotional. It was calm, controlled, almost cold. He frowned and turned the volume up. She wasn't talking to him. She was talking to someone else. Her voice was low, careful, like she didn't want to be overheard. Kwesi leaned closer, his heart starting to beat faster as he tried to understand what he was hearing. Then she said something that made him freeze. He replayed the message again, just to make sure he heard it right. This wasn't a normal conversation. This sounded planned. Kwesi's hands slowly tightened around his phone. The confusion he had been feeling for days started turning into something else. Suspicion. Because the way Ajoa was speaking in that voicemail, it didn't match the story she was telling the world at all. And in that moment Kwesi realized there was something much bigger going on behind all of this. Kwesi didn't stop at one voicemail. With a heavy feeling in his chest he opened the next one, and then another. Each recording made things clearer and worse. It was Ajoa's voice in all of them. She was talking to someone, maybe a close friend or even a lawyer. Her tone was calm, confident, almost proud. And what she was saying didn't sound like a victim at all. She was discussing a plan, step by step. Kwesi's heart started racing as he listened. In one recording she talked about how she could use certain words in court to make her story stronger. In another she mentioned how people are quick to believe emotional stories, especially when a woman claims financial control or abuse. Then she laughed, like it was all a game built around destroying him. She even said how easy it would be to take control of everything, his house, his business, his savings, if she played it smart. She sounded sure of herself, like she had already won before the case even started. Kwesi felt his hands shaking. He had to pause the audio for a moment just to breathe. This wasn't anger anymore. This wasn't confusion. This was something deeper. Betrayal. The woman he trusted, the woman he shared everything with, had been planning this behind his back. All those moments that didn't make sense before suddenly came together. The distance, the secrecy, the sudden accusations, it was all connected. Kwesi pressed play again just to be sure. But the more he listened, the more undeniable it became. This wasn't just a messy divorce. This was a setup from the very beginning. And now, for the first time since everything started, Kwesi finally had proof. Kwesi didn't waste any time. The next morning he contacted his lawyer, Kojo Asure, and asked for an urgent meeting. When they sat down, Kwesi didn't say much at first. He just handed over his phone and played the voicemails. Kojo listened carefully, his expression slowly changing with each recording. When the last audio ended, there was a short silence in the room. Then Kojo leaned back and said something Kwesi hadn't heard in days. This changes everything. He explained that these recordings could completely flip the case. They showed clear intent, planning, and manipulation. But he also warned Kwesi that it had to be handled the right way. If they rushed or used it carelessly, it might not have the impact they needed in court. So they made a plan. Kwesi would stay quiet. No defending himself online. No arguing with friends or relatives. No reacting to Ajoa's claims, no matter how frustrating it felt. Instead, they would let her continue telling her story, while they carefully prepared the truth behind the scenes. It wasn't easy. Every day Kwesi heard new rumors. People whispering, judging him without knowing the full story. But this time he didn't react. He stayed calm, focused, and patient. Because now he wasn't confused anymore. He wasn't lost. He had something powerful in his hands. And for the first time since the lawsuit began, Kwesi felt a shift inside him. The fear started fading, replaced by something stronger. Control. He knew the truth was on his side. Now it was just a matter of the right moment to reveal it. The courtroom in Accra was full that day. People filled the seats, whispering, watching closely. Cases like this always attracted attention, and by now many had already heard Ajoa's side of the story. She stood confidently, dressed sharply, speaking with emotion and control. Her voice carried across the room as she repeated her claims. How Kwesi had controlled the money, how she felt trapped, how she had suffered in silence. Every word sounded powerful, carefully chosen. Some people in the courtroom nodded as she spoke. Others looked at Kwesi with doubt. The story she told was convincing, and it was clear she had practiced it many times. Kwesi sat quietly at his table. He didn't interrupt. He didn't react. He just listened, his face calm even though inside he could feel the tension building. This was the moment everything depended on, but he stayed patient just like he and his lawyer had planned. The judge listened carefully, taking notes, asking a few questions. From the outside it started to feel like things were going in Ajoa's favor. Her confidence, her story, the way people were responding, it all made it look like she was winning. For a brief moment the room felt settled, like the outcome was already decided. Then Kojo Asare slowly stood up. The room went quiet. He adjusted his papers, looked directly at the judge and spoke in a calm but firm voice. Your Honor, we have new evidence. In that instant the entire atmosphere changed. People leaned forward. The whispers stopped. And for the first time that day, all eyes turned to Kwesi. The courtroom went completely silent as Kojo connected the phone and pressed play. For a second nothing happened. Ajoa's voice filled the room. Come. Unmistakable. Everyone froze. At first people looked confused, trying to understand what they were hearing. But as the recording continued, the meaning became impossible to ignore. Ajoa wasn't crying or sounding hurt like she did in court. She sounded calculated, confident. He talked about a plan. She talked about using certain accusations to win sympathy. About how easy it would be to make Kwesi look guilty. And then, she laughed. A quiet, chilling laugh that echoed in the silent courtroom. Kwesi didn't move. He just watched. Ajoa's face slowly changed. The confidence she had just minutes ago started to disappear. Her eyes shifted, her posture stiffened, and for the first time she looked nervous. The recording ended, but the silence stayed. No one whispered now. No one nodded. People who had believed her just moments ago were now looking at her in shock, some even shaking their heads. The same story that once sounded convincing now felt like a lie, exposed right in front of everyone. The judge leaned forward slightly, his expression serious, focused. Everything had changed. The balance of the case, the energy in the room, the way people saw Ajoa. It all shifted in that one moment. Because the truth didn't need explaining anymore. It had just spoken for itself. And now the judge was no longer looking at Kwesi as the problem. He was looking at Ajoa very differently. For a moment Ajoa just sat there frozen. Then she quickly tried to recover. She shook her head, forcing a small laugh, and said the recordings were being misunderstood. She claimed they were taken out of context, that it wasn't what it sounded like. But it was too late. The evidence was clear. Her voice, her words, her plan. No explanation could erase what everyone had just heard. Her lawyer tried to step in, attempting to defend her, but even he seemed unsure now. The confidence they both had earlier was gone. Every argument they made started to sound weak, forced, like they were trying to fix something that was already broken. Slowly her entire case began to fall apart. The same claims that once sounded strong now raised questions. The judge started pointing out inconsistencies. Details didn't match. Her story no longer held the same weight. It was like everything she built started collapsing piece by piece, right there in the courtroom. And now, instead of gaining control of Kwesi's house, business and savings, Ajoa was facing something much worse. Serious consequences. Because this wasn't just a false claim anymore. It looked like an intentional attempt to manipulate the legal system for personal gain. The room felt different now. People who once looked at Kwesi with doubt were now looking at him with understanding. Some even with respect. The man they thought was guilty had stayed calm, said nothing and let the truth come out at the right time. Kwesi sat quietly, taking it all in. Because finally, he was no longer the villain in the story. He was the one who had been wronged all along. Weeks later, Kwesi finally walked out of the courtroom, and it felt like a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. His house, his business and his savings were safe. But more than that, something even more important had returned. His reputation. People no longer saw him as the controlling, manipulative husband Ajoa had painted him to be. They saw the truth. Kwesi took a deep breath, standing outside under the bright across sky. The air felt fresh, like a new beginning. He thought about everything that had happened. The lies, the betrayal, the fear he felt when it seemed like everything was slipping away. The woman he had trusted the most had tried to destroy him, but her plan had failed. The truth had won. He didn't feel the need for revenge. That wasn't his victory. His real win was different. It came from staying calm, being patient, and letting the evidence speak for itself. He had endured the whispers, the judgment, the tension, and in the end, timing and truth had done what anger never could. Kwesi smiled slightly, feeling a quiet strength inside. Sometimes he realized the most powerful victory isn't about fighting back. It's about standing strong, waiting for the truth and letting it set everything right. And today that truth had set him free.